I'd like to share with you all the story of a little girl who is actually a really good friend of the executive director of the Mosaic Project, Laura Mendel. She's about the same height as Laura Mendel, maybe a little bit shorter even, much bluer. She has about 3 more arms, 4 more legs, 6 more eyes, and 2 more brains. Which means that she's really smart. You gotta get that? Yeah. So, her name actually is Posa Rarks, and she lives on the planet of Hiteray. And Posa Rarks on the planet of Hiteray goes to school at one of those schools that's just kind of like every other school on the whole planet. You know what I'm talking about? Like a school where every morning the bell rings at 8 a.m. and all the classes start. And all the teachers start teaching their classes. So the bell rings. Ding! And the teachers start teaching. Wow, 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 wow. Very good. Y'all have been to these kinds of schools, I can see. And then at noon the bell rings again. Ding! And the kids all run out on the playground and start playing. Very good. And then the bell rings again at 1 o'clock. And they go back to the classrooms and the teachers start teaching. And then the bell rings again at 3 o'clock. And they go home and their parents start talking to them. And every day is like this for Posa Rarks. Every day until one day when the principal, Mr. Reginald, decided it was time for a change at Posa Rarks' school. The principal, Mr. Reginald, had gotten sick to death of all of those little kids screaming and playing during lunchtime. See, Mr. Reginald's office was actually a 3rd-story office with those big, those big windows that are like 6 feet tall and 8 feet wide, and he would like to leave his windows open so he could enjoy the fresh breeze coming into his office. It's one of those pleasant, warm days when he was enjoying so much that breeze, and the bell rang at noon. Ding! And of course, when the bell rings at noon, the children go out and start playing. And Mr. Reginald couldn't stand all those children making such playful noises right outside his window. He couldn't stand it so much that he slammed the window shut. And put his arms on his desk and looked at his paperwork and thought, "Rumph." And he did that again a couple times. "Rumph. Rumph." And he started getting really hot because the window was closed now and the sun was beating down on him, and he just, "Rumph. Rumph. Rumph." And Mr. Reginald decided that day that there would be no more recess at Posa Rarks' school. Now, Posa Rarks that day, who had her 8 arms and her 6 legs and her 14 eyeballs and 3 brains, so she was really smart, right?
Yeah.
Okay, you know what I'm talking about. So, Posa Rarks that day, when she found out from Mr. Reginald that there would no longer be any playtime outdoors during lunchtime, she got really sad. You see, she loved to play with all of her friends. They were all imaginary because she had so much brains that she thought about all these friends that she would have lots of imaginary, she could keep them all in her brain. But so she had all these imaginary friends and she loved to play with them, but they only came out to play when she was outside. And she realized that she would never get to do that again, so she just got so sad. She got so sad. She got so sad, and she stayed so sad that the next day, after the 8 o'clock bell rang, ding! And after the teacher started talking, And right when that noon bell rang, she took her sad little 8 legs over down to Mr. Reginald's office, and she took her 5 arms and she knocked on the door. And Mr. Reginald got up and he opened the door, and there she was. Her whole head with all 3 brains just sunk down. And she said, Mr. Reginald, I'm so sad. I really wanted to go outside for recess. And you know what Mr. Reginald did?
Slam the door in her face.
That's exactly what he did! He slammed the door right in her face.
Wow.
And you know what he said then?
Ruff.
Ruff! Now, that day, when Posa Rarks got that door slammed in her face, she got angry. She didn't get just angry, she got mad. She got furious. She got frustrated. And she was so angry all day. She was waving her arms all around her and saying, I'm so mad. 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 She looked like my friend Mari. And then she was going out and she was talking to her friends after school, and she was saying, I'm so mad, I'm so mad, I'm so mad. She went home, and when her parents started trying to talk to her, she just said, I'm so mad, I'm so mad, I'm so mad, I can't even listen to you, I'm so mad. And the next day, the bell rang at 8 o'clock, and before the teachers could even start talking, she went straight to Mr. Reginald's door, and she knocked really hard. And as soon as Mr. Reginald opened the door, she stormed right into his office and she said, You listen here, you big meanie! I'm telling you, it's not acceptable, it's not okay, it's not fair, it's not just to let us not have recess. I can't believe you did this, you big old meanie! And do you know what Mr. Reginald did?
Call the cops.
He thought about it. He got so far as he had picked up the interstellar telephone and he was putting it up to his ear, and then he thought, no, I can actually deal with this myself. So he hung it up and he took the angry little child, the angry Posa Rarks, took his hand and put it on her neck, and he just walked her right out of the room.
He didn't expel her?
And then he slammed the door. Oh, he didn't really care enough. And then he got back on his desk and said, Now, that night, after the 3 o'clock bell rang, and after her parents had talked to her, she got to thinking. Like triple thinking, you know what I'm talking about? Because she had 3 brains, so she was really smart. So 3 brains worth of thinking that night. She was thinking, well, first when this happened, I was really sad, and I went and I talked to the principal when I was really sad, and I was just kind of like down and feeling really bad, and he didn't even listen to me. He just slammed the door in my face. And then the second day I went and I talked to him, and I was really, really mad, and he didn't really listen to me either. And I was like screaming at him and everything, but he just kind of shoved me right out. I want Miss Reginald to listen to me. She just thought, I really want this guy who's got all this power at our school, so much power, he can tell us that we can't even have playtime outside. I really want him to listen to me. So she thought and she thought and she thought, and she made a plan. So the next day, the bell rang at 8 o'clock. The teachers talked. The bell rang at noon. And Ms. Posa Rarks walked on over to Mr. Reginald's door. She had her shoulders squared. She had her chin held just about at this level. She had her eyes focused, and she knocked politely on the door. Mr. Reginald, thinking that that polite knock could not possibly be from a child at his school, got up and answered as if it were the superintendent, because that was the only other person who visited him. So he opened it, and he said, "Ah, Mrs." And there was little Posa Rarks, standing there with her shoulders squared, and her chin held high, and her eyes focused straight ahead. She said, "Mr. Reginald, would now be an appropriate time to have an appointment with you to discuss an urgent matter. Please, I'll come in. You can have a seat." And Mr. Reginald was so stunned, he was so perplexed, he was so befuddled that he just backed right down and had a seat. And Miss Posa Rarks sat across the desk from him and said, "It has come to my attention that the decree which you issued disallowing the children at this school from participating in lunchtime outdoor playtime has had a negative impact on our abilities to enjoy our time here at school, to make healthy relationships and connections with our friends, and to pay attention for the rest of the day when we are not having playtime. Due to these important matters, which I know that you value, I would like you to consider reinstating lunchtime recess." Now you might think that that would have done the trick. And with most people, it would have. But Mr. Reginald was just, he was one of those people that just, something must have happened to him really early on in his life. He must have been like, I don't know, maybe his dad, was in the army and died. Or maybe it was that his mom just, loved her work so much that she could never come home and eat dinner with him. Or maybe it was just that he had a friend who was a big bully to him. Who knows? We don't really know why Mr. Reginald was like the way he was, but something hard must have happened. He was a hurt person. That's what we think. He was so hurt that when Posa Rarks had given that beautiful, eloquent, marvelous, spectacular speech to him, all he did was put his arms on the desk and say, "Ruff!" But this time, Posa Rarks did not let that stop her. She felt sad. She felt angry. And she said, "I can use this sadness, I can use this anger to get what I want." And so she strode out of that principal's office, and she strode down the hallway, knocking on teachers' doors. And the teachers would come out, and as soon as they started talking to her, she would say, "I actually have something very important to discuss with you." And teacher after teacher, she explained the situation. She explained how she thought that not having lunchtime recess was affecting the students' grades. She explained how she thought that if all the teachers would come together and support her in being assertive with Mr. Reginald, he might just have to let them have their recess. And so, there they all were. And in fact, the teachers, once they had heard about this and thought about it, and they kind of gone wah, wah, wah to each other a little bit, because they had to discuss it, then they actually thought that this was a really good idea and that maybe they should get all the kids too. So all the teachers, with their whole classes, walked on down the hall, following little Posa Rarks. So there she was, walking down the hall of the school, with the whole school, the teachers, the students, even the aides, even the janitor, walking with them. And they went right up to Mr. Reginald's office, and they knocked politely. And when Mr. Reginald opened that door, he just started crying. He was so touched, he was so moved. He looked at that whole school assembled in front of him, that school which he thought he had the power to assemble whenever he wanted to assemble in front of him. He looked at them and he started just weeping. And he said, when I was in 3rd grade, the principal took away the tater tots from the lunchroom. And I tried to get them back, and all I ever wanted was the whole school to come around and support me. And here the whole school is all around you supporting you. And little Posa Rarks, she put her arms, all 6 of them, around Mr. Reginald. She said, "They're there. It's okay. Everybody needs an ally." And from that day forth, there was never another day without